The alien child's wail pierced the stillness. No breeze stirred the twisted canopy of Kepler's untamed wilderness. The silence crushed down like suffocating breath, too absolute to wrong. Marcus stood frozen on the cracked platform outside his shelter, eyes scanning the dense tree line. A thick veil of luminous particles shimmered in the filtered sunlight, glowing softly between the strange ferns and tangled root systems. He recognized this quiet. He'd experienced it before, the last time he'd heard a child scream. The memory blazed behind his eyes like fresh wounds, the inferno, the hissing pressure suits, the desperate transmission pleading for evacuation. Another voice drifted through the air, distant. A scream followed, thin and piercing, distorted by the particle-heavy atmosphere. Without thinking, Marcus grabbed his breathing apparatus and plunged into the undergrowth. The shelter sealed itself behind him, vines wrapping over its surface. Like grasping fingers pulling down a shroud, he navigated the treacherous terrain with practiced skill. The ground here was dangerous, thick carpets of fungal networks underfoot, heat-seeking vines, and insects that could bore through flesh within moments if disturbed. Still, he pressed forward, the voice drawing him onward. He crested a hill, pushed through a curtain of floating spores, and stopped. Below, a small clearing opened like a wound in the forest floor. Among the crimson grass and broken undergrowth, a child knelt beside a figure sprawled on the ground. The woman lay twisted, her leg caught grotesquely in the rusted metal teeth of an old off-world hunting snare. The child looked up, azure skin, flowing pearl-white hair clinging to her dirt-streaked cheeks. Her amber eyes locked onto his and filled instantly with tears. She took a trembling step forward. "Please help my mother," she cried, her voice breaking halfway through. But it was clear, desperate, and unmistakably human in its anguish. Marcus raised both hands slowly. "I won't harm you," he said gently, though his own voice sounded foreign to him. He stepped closer, then another pace. The trap was ancient off-world technology, probably poacher equipment. The metal was iron, tarnished and barbed, designed to clamp tighter with movement. The woman's foot was mangled, blood seeping into the moss beneath her. She was unconscious, her pale azure face slick with perspiration. A delicate chain around her neck held a carved pendant, something like bone shaped into a spiral with a small symbol burned into the center. Tribal, perhaps ceremonial. She hadn't appeared from nowhere. He crouched low, trying to ignore how close she was, how fragile she appeared. His chest constricted. He hadn't touched another living being in many years. His fingers hesitated just above the trap's mechanism. What if I worsen her injury? What if I cause more pain? What if she dies and it's my fault again? But the child was watching him, her tiny hands clenched into fists at her sides. Marcus swallowed his fear, not for himself, for her. He found a flat shard of hardened bark and wedged it under the trap's pressure plate. The metal groaned as he forced it apart. The woman's body convulsed, and she moaned softly, still alive. He tore off his outer shirt and wrapped it around the shredded foot, his fingers working quickly, numbly, muscle memory taking over. His belt cinched the makeshift bandage tight. "What's your name?" he asked, glancing up at the girl. She sniffled. "Luna. I'm Marcus. I'm going to carry your mother now, all right? Stay close." Luna nodded and moved beside him, clutching the hem of his coat. Lifting the woman was harder than he expected, not from the weight. She was lean, almost too light, but from the terror in his own hands. Touching her felt like holding something sacred, something he didn't deserve to be near. Her skin was cool, threaded with glowing veins beneath the surface. Her hair spilled like silk over his arm. "Don't think, move." They reached the shelter within minutes, though the spongy terrain made every step feel slower. Marcus's shoulder pressed the emergency seal open and the hatch hissed wide to reveal his half-living home. The interior of the shelter was more forest than dwelling now. Vines stretched across the cracked ceiling and moss carpeted the floor like luminescent lace. Glowing spores clung to every surface. The sterile white of the old terraforming pod had been swallowed by wild green. He cleared a patch of the cot with his forearm, brushing away bark fragments and tangled root strands. Carefully, he laid her down. Her breathing was shallow. He activated an old medical scanner. Thankfully, it still hummed to life. Her oxygen levels were low, circulation erratic. She needed stabilizing quickly. He moved with grim focus, pouring antiseptic sap into the wound. The liquid hissed against exposed tissue. She flinched but didn't wake. Luna had crept up beside the cot, watching everything with wide eyes. Is she going to die? She whispered. No, Marcus said. Not if I can help it. He wrapped the foot in clean fiber bandage strips secured with old adhesive mesh. He injected her thigh with a fungal extract derived from spore resin, painful but effective. Luna clutched her mother's uninjured hand, her small body pressed against her side. Marcus stepped back. His gloves were slick with blood, his breath shallow. He moved toward the basin in the far corner and scrubbed his hands raw under recycled water, watching the red swirl down the rusted drain. You did what you had to, but the tremor in his fingertips told him it was more than that. He sat on a bench near the wall, watching her, watching them. Luna's breathing slowed as she drifted into sleep beside her mother. The woman's face remained tense, but less so now. Her chest rose and fell in a steady rhythm. Her necklace caught the light that carved spiral. It wasn't decoration. It meant something. She had a story, a tribe, a past. Marcus didn't know her name. He didn't know why she'd been alone in the forest. He didn't know if helping her had just dragged him into something bigger than he could handle. But for now, she was safe. And the child Luna was safe. That had to be enough. She woke with a dull throb of pain anchored deep in her leg. At first, Zara thought she was still in the forest, that she'd passed out beneath the bloodgrass with Luna's sobs echoing in her ears. But the air was too still to clean, and there was warmth gentle and dry against her back. Her eyes flickered open. A curved ceiling loomed above her, cracked and partially covered in glowing vines. The smell was unfamiliar moss, old metal, faint and aseptic. Her instinct surged first. Where's Luna? She tried to sit up. The pain in her ankle bloomed instantly, white hot and violent. She gasped and fell back with a strangled cry. You'll reopen the clot if you move like that, said a voice. She snapped her head toward it. A human male sat just beyond the glow of the moss wall, elbows on his knees, back hunched. His face was shadowed, but the line of his jaw was tense. His shoulders wound tight like he hadn't slept in days. Zara's eyes darted around the room. Where is she? Safe, he said. Sleeping. She hasn't left your side since I brought you in, only. Then did she notice the small body curled beside her. Luna's white hair fanned across the cot, tangled but clean, her little hands clutching the hem of Zara's tunic. Relief washed over her in a tidal rush. Her heart stuttered with it. She pressed a shaking hand to her daughter's back and let the familiar rhythm of her breathing calm her. The man stood slowly, cautious but not aggressive, and stepped closer into the bioluminescent light. His face was pale, drawn, haunted even. Under the sterile light, his cheeks looked hollow, marked faintly by scarred patches near his temple and jawline. I'm Marcus, he said. You're in my shelter. I pulled you out of a trap south of here. Zara narrowed her eyes, unsure if she could trust the name or the man. Her people didn't forget what the Outworlders had brought to Kepler's forests: poachers, scorch walkers, harvesters with clean gloves and dirty hearts. How long? She asked, voice hoarse. Several days since I found you. You've been in and out fever from the wound. I gave you resin-based clotters. They worked eventually. Her gaze shifted to her foot. It was wrapped in clean bandagging, scented faintly of something sharp, almost citrus. The trap was gone. So was the blood. You burned the fever out of me? She asked, tone wary. I cooled it, he said. Didn't burn anything that wasn't necessary. She didn't answer. Her fingers threaded gently through Luna's hair. I wasn't sure you'd make it, he added, quieter now. She wouldn't leave you. I couldn't make her. You shouldn't have touched me, Zara said after a pause. Not an accusation, more a fact. Marcus exhaled, the sound barely audible. I didn't have a choice. There was silence between them, not empty, but tense. The kind that comes when two animals circle, unsure if the other is wounded or dangerous. Then Luna stirred. Her small body rolled, eyes blinking open. She saw her mother and instantly sat up. Mama, she whispered, throwing her arms around Zara's shoulders. You're awake. You're really awake. Zara winced but pulled her close, inhaling the scent of her hair, pressing her lips to her daughter's forehead. Are you hurt? She asked. Luna shook her head. No, I was scared, but he helped. He fixed your foot. He gave me food like warm paste and soup that smells like tree bark. Marcus let out the barest breath of a laugh. Zara looked back at him, gaze hard. You fed her. She was hungry. You let her sleep beside me. She refused anything else. Zara studied him again. His eyes didn't hold arrogance or pride, just weariness and something else she couldn't quite place. He didn't carry himself like a poacher. didn't move like a soldier. His hands, when she looked, were steady but callous, practiced in tending, not breaking. She noticed something else then, a faint tremor in his fingers as he adjusted one of the biolamps. Not fear, something deeper. Hesitation. Guilt. She turned to Luna. Did he hurt you? Luna blinked, surprised. No, he was scared, but not scary. Marcus turned away then, heading toward a cluttered shelf half swallowed by glowing ivy. I'll bring food, he said. You'll need it if the fever's broken. Zara didn't answer. She watched him move carefully, like someone who expected rejection. With every gesture, when he returned, he handed her a shallow bowl. It was warm, something thick inside, fiber paste with ground protein root and a medicinal spice she couldn't place. She hesitated. Her people didn't eat what wasn't foraged or prepared by one of their own. But she was weak, and Luna had eaten it. She took one bite. Her hands trembled. The warmth hit her throat like fire, but she didn't stop. Marcus didn't watch her eat. He busied himself adjusting a broken panel above the water reclamator. Luna watched both of them with wide eyes. Mama, she whispered, his house is broken, but the flowers grow here. I saw one open yesterday. It glowed. Zara set the bowl down. Her stomach wasn't ready for more. Yes, she said softly. Sometimes broken things make room for life. Marcus flinched at that, though she hadn't meant it as a blow. The shelter lights flickered again. Marcus's head snapped toward the console. He crossed the room, checked the screen, and tapped a few commands. Zara watched him. What is it? One of the outer sensors, he murmured. Pinged again. Something moving near the ridge. Could be an animal. Could be hunters. He didn't deny it. Luna's fingers curled into Zara's hand. We'll stay quiet, Marcus said. Nothing's coming through the spores easily. Not without coughing up half a lung. Zara didn't like being trapped, but her ankle was still useless, and Luna's safety came first. She laid back slowly, exhaling as the pain in her leg pulsed again. You should rest, Marcus said. Zara hesitated, then nodded. As she closed her eyes, she felt Luna's small weight curl against her side again, and she let it happen. But even through her exhaustion, she stayed alert. So did Marcus. He sat against the far wall, half-shadowed, watching the screen. His expression, unreadable, but the tremor in his hands had stopped. Morning filtered through the broken panes of the shelter like liquid amber, soft and warm where it touched the floor. Spores swirled in the sunbeams, glimmering faintly as they drifted through the air. Inside, the quiet was fragile to calm to still, as though any loud breath might shatter it. Zara sat propped against a wall of vine-wrapped mesh, her injured leg wrapped and elevated. Her eyes followed Marcus silently as he moved through his overgrown workstation, avoiding her gaze but never straying far from where she and Luna lay. He moved like someone who didn't trust himself to be still. He hadn't spoken since offering breakfast. He simply placed the shallow dish beside her, muttered something about heat-tolerant roots, and returned to calibrating an old atmospheric reader that flickered half alive on the wall. Zara's fingers curled around the bowl. It was warm, its surface etched with scratches and signs of long use. The food inside steamed gently, some kind of mashed tuber seasoned with ground bark and resin oil. The flavor was sharp but oddly comforting. She ate slowly, letting the warmth settle her stomach and dull the pain in her foot. Luna sat beside, her legs folded beneath her like a hatchling bird, chewing noisily. He always gives it with the sweet sprigs now, she whispered between bites. Not at first, but then I told him it tasted like old feet. Zara raised an eyebrow. You said that to him? Luna grinned. He didn't laugh, but he added the sprigs the next day. Across the room, Marcus's back remained turned, but his shoulders shifted slightly. Zara set her bowl down. She studied him, not just the motions, but the edges, the stiffness in his posture, the precision with which he aligned every tool, the pause in his movements when he thought no one was looking. You live here alone? She asked, breaking the silence. Marcus nodded but didn't turn around. For years. Luna blinked. But where's your daughter? Marcus froze. The tension that rippled through him was subtle but unmistakable. He picked up a piece of equipment, then set it back down again without a word. Zara narrowed her eyes, not pressing further but not retreating either. Marcus finally spoke, his voice lower than before. I didn't have a daughter. Luna tilted her head. Did you want one? Sometimes. Then he looked at Zara. But some people shouldn't be responsible for anyone, especially not after the damage they've done. Zara said nothing. She looked at the scars lining his hands, the tightness in his face, the kind of weight a man only carried when guilt had fused in his bones. She shifted, wincing at the flare of pain. Marcus was beside her before she could object. He reached down but stopped just short of touching her foot. "May I?" he asked, voice quiet. Zara hesitated, her body tensed on instinct. Then slowly, she nodded. His hands were careful, steady, but reverent, as if he feared her skin might shatter beneath his touch. He peeled back the outer wrap and checked the wound. Her blood had stopped pooling, but the bruising was deep, discoloring. The skin in jagged purple and gray streaks. "You'll walk again," he said, "but not today. Maybe not this week." Zara studied his face as he worked. There was no arrogance in him, no demand for praise, just focus, restraint. "You used to be something else," she said quietly. "Something important." Marcus nodded once. "Terraforming botanist. Colonial division. I helped design the seed pods and moisture traps used on early moons like this one. Helped design." He gave a bitter smile. "And helped destroy one of our early prototypes caused a cascade failure on a nearby colony. Spores became hyperactive. Temperature regulation collapsed. Flora mutated. The environment turned toxic. We lost everyone." "Not we," Zara said. "You blame yourself." His hands paused. "I wasn't the only one who made the choices," he said, as if repeating something he'd tried to believe before. "But I was the one who signed off on the deployment. I believed it would work." That belief killed people. Luna had gone quiet beside them. Even at her age, she understood enough to keep still when pain was being spoken aloud. Zara exhaled slowly. "And so you buried yourself in this place. No one was going to listen to me after that. And I didn't want them to." He finished rewrapping her foot and stood. "I came here because I couldn't imagine being around people again." Zara tilted her head. "Then why save us?" Marcus looked at her, and for a moment he seemed genuinely at a loss. "You screamed," he said finally. "Or Luna did. And I moved before I could think. It wasn't choice. It was reflex." Zara stared at him a moment longer, then nodded. "You don't sound like the ones who haunt us." His eyes darkened. "I'm not like them." She gestured toward the vines that crawled along the ceiling, their tips glowing faint green. "Your shelter's been claimed by the forest. It's alive. It's infected. Every system is compromised," he said flatly. "But I stopped trying to fight it. Now I just manage it." "Adaptation," Zara said. "The forest likes you." Marcus didn't answer, but his mouth quirked faintly. Luna stood up then and scampered over to a patch of moss near the wall. She knelt, poking at a set of bulbous fungal blooms. "Look," she said. "This one opened yesterday." It sprayed stuff at Marcus and made him sneeze. Zara's eyes widened just slightly. "It sprayed you?" Marcus raised his brows in mild annoyance. "It startled me, that's all." She laughed for minutes, he added. Luna beamed. "It was funny." Zara found herself smiling, small, restrained, but real. "The first since the forest." Then, from the console, a soft ping echoed. Marcus crossed the room quickly. His expression shifted. "Something?" Zara asked. "Outer ridge motion sensor again." He studied the readout. "Whatever it is, it's coming closer." Slowly. "Same path." Zara stiffened. "Poachers? I don't know yet. Could be animals, could be machines, but they're testing our perimeter." Luna moved closer to her mother, slipping her hand into Zara's. "We'll stay quiet," Marcus said. "If it's hunters, they won't come through during the day. The spores are too dense right now. Nights, that's when they try." Zara nodded once. "Then we wait." Marcus retrieved a blanket and handed it to Luna. "Rest if you can." He paused, then met Zara's gaze. "You're safe here, for now." Zara didn't reply, but when Luna lay beside her and pulled the blanket over both of them, she didn't resist. Marcus returned to the bench, watching the console in silence. The tension in the room didn't lift, but something had shifted again. The way he touched her foot, the way she let him. A small seed of trust had been planted, and like everything in this strange, tangled place, it had the potential to grow. The storm rolled in without warning. One moment, the air beyond the shelter shimmered with spore light and the faint scent of blooming bark fruit. The next, the sky darkened with churning fungal clouds that stretched like bruises across the horizon. A low, pulsing hum vibrated through the floor, the kind that signaled the spore burst storms that came once every few cycles. Dense, suffocating. Waves of airborne life thick enough to smother a man's lungs if caught outside unprotected. Marcus locked the final seal just before the outer pressure gauge screamed. Inside the shelter, light dimmed to a sickly yellow. Rain didn't fall not like water but in sheets of dust-laden spore flakes that clung to every surface. The atmosphere moaned with chemical tension, the air outside shifting too rapidly for sound to move clearly. Even the forest, usually wild and loud with life, fell quiet beneath the storm's weight. Zara sat by the reinforced inner wall, her injured leg propped up on a folded cushion. Luna lay curled against her, finally asleep. After a restless morning, the silence that filled the shelter was thicker than the storm, heavier somehow, like it carried the weight of too many unspoken things. Marcus leaned against the moss-lined console, arms folded tightly across his chest. How long will it last? Zara asked, her voice low but steady. Could be a day, could be longer, Marcus replied. It'll burn through quick if the winds shift north. He gestured vaguely toward the shelter. If not, we stay in here and wait it out. Zara nodded, then added, storms like this don't reach the upper cliffs. Marcus looked at her. You know the forest that well? She shrugged. We've lived near this Moon's southern basin since I was a girl. My people mapped the safe paths, every plant, every hollow, every shift in the air. We remember all of it, because forgetting gets you killed. Marcus's brow furrowed. Your tribe? I've never encountered any records of it in the Central Colonial Archives. No, Zara said simply. You wouldn't have. There was a pause. My mate was a wayfinder, she said, her voice softer now, tinged with a quiet rhythm. We followed the old ground winds, harvesting only what regrew. He taught Luna to track trails and sleep in the trees. Then one night we heard the fire sticks. The sky tore open, men dropped in metal ships. They weren't looking for us, but they didn't care if we were in the way. Marcus didn't speak. Zara continued. We ran. He ran slower. I carried Luna. He stayed behind. She looked down at her daughter, brushing a strand of white hair from her cheek. He told me not to stop. Her eyes remained dry, but her fingers trembled faintly where they rested on the cot. They wanted you for something? Marcus asked, keeping his voice gentle. Knowledge, she said. Our people have instincts trained, passed down. We know what heals, what kills. And there are those who would take that without asking. Marcus nodded. Knowledge is just another resource to some people. Just another thing to strip mine. Zara tilted her head. And you? What did they take from you? Marcus hesitated. The shelter hummed faintly around them, storm winds rattling the external frame. I led a project on Yon Colony, he said. Terraforming moon colonies. Kepler was one of them. We developed adaptive flora plants that could balance moisture, regulate air density, self-sustaining systems. Zara raised a brow. Sounds useful. It was, he said. Until it wasn't. He turned to the console, running a hand through his hair. There was a flaw in the sequence. One genome corrupted the next. A fungal cascade we didn't predict. It spread to the settlements, accelerated decomposition. People breathed it in. It altered their lungs, their skin. They died slowly. Zara said nothing. I watched a town of hundreds dissolve in days. By the time we understood what we'd done, it was already too late. I sent out the recall signal myself. Then I disappeared. Marcus looked down at his hands. I haven't touched another person since. Until you. The quiet that followed felt more honest than anything spoken. I thought I buried that man, he said. But when I saw Luna beside you, screaming for help, I didn't think. I just moved. You still carry guilt, Zara said. I don't think it ever left, he replied. They sat in silence, not heavy this time, just present. Then softly, Zara reached out and touched his hand. Marcus froze. She didn't grip, didn't pull, just laid her fingers lightly against the back of his palm. Her touch was warm. You helped, she said. Not just her. Me too. That matters. He looked down at where her skin met his azure against, pale, steady, no shaking. I didn't expect forgiveness, he said. This isn't forgiveness, Zara said. It's trust. A seed of it. Outside, the storm pulsed again. The shelter shivered. Luna stirred in her sleep and mumbled something about leaves with faces. Marcus smiled faintly. She dreams out loud. She always has, Zara said. Even before she had words, the two of them stayed like that for a long time, Zara's hand resting against his. Marcus watching her, not as a patient, not as a stranger, but as someone alive, someone real. He didn't pull away, and she didn't let go. The storm had passed days ago, but its memory lingered in the soil and air. The forest, always alive, now breathed with renewed heat, pulsing with energy as if stirred awake by the chaos Marcus had repaired the upper filtration panel that morning, sweat pouring from his neck as he wrestled old wiring back into submission. The shelter creaked and hissed in places it never used to, but it held. Somehow, it always held. He turned from the console and looked out through the broken visor port toward the garden where two familiar silhouettes moved among the moss beds. Zara was walking, truly walking for the first time without support. She no longer leaned on the cane he'd carved. It sat unused beside the door, half buried in soft earth, forgotten like an old fear. Her steps were careful but determined, and Marcus could see the old tension in her shoulders replaced by quiet control. Luna bounded ahead of her, hair undone and feet bare, her laughter echoing off the curved interior of the shelter like a song the place had forgotten how to hold. She dragged a makeshift cart made from salvage bin parts, filled with water pods and hand-cut spade tools. Careful. Near the edge, Zara called softly, "I know, Mama," Luna chirped back. Marcus stepped outside, wiping his hands on a scrap of cloth. The heat hit him instantly, thick with humidity and the scent of ripe bark fruit. He moved toward the beds where Zara was kneeling, trimming a row of resilient coil grass with a hand-forged blade. "I saw you," he said. She looked up, shielding her eyes with one hand. "Doing what?" "Walking," he said, unaided. A small smile tugged at her lips, not coy, but quietly proud. "It's not perfect yet." Marcus crouched beside her. "Still, it's real." She handed him a bundle of cut grass. "Then help me finish the western rows. They're ready for transplanting." They worked in tandem, him loosening the soil, her placing seedlings. The rhythm settled between them like a breath shared in silence. No words, just presence. At one point she reached to steady a shifting vine, and their hands brushed. The contact was brief, but neither flinched. "I used to think healing was a straight line," Marcus said after a while, his voice low. "That once the bleeding stopped, it meant you were better." Zara didn't answer right away. She pressed a coil grass bulb deeper into the soil. "It's not," she finally said. "It's a spiral. You circle the same pain, but each time you come back to it, you're stronger." Marcus nodded. "I think this place knew that long before I did." From the far side of the shelter, Luna yelped as a cluster of spores exploded beneath her foot, showering her in purple dust. She staggered back, blinking in surprise, then burst into laughter. "Did you see that? It popped. Are you all right?" Zara asked. Luna struck a dramatic pose. "I am dusted and glorious." Marcus laughed, a genuine sound that surprised even him. "She gets that from you," Zara murmured. He shook his head. "She gets that from life. She's growing in all directions." "So, are you?" she said softly. He looked at her, then really looked. Her pale azure skin glowed where the sunlight caught it, faint veins shimmering beneath the surface, pulsing like the roots of the forest that surrounded them. She didn't wear armor, not anymore. Only a woven wrap at her waist and a soft cotton shirt he'd salvaged and resized for her. He'd seen her bloody, feverish, fighting to protect a child. But here, planting, she looked more like herself than ever. Before, whole, rooted. "You know," she said, "in my people's stories, when you bury something broken in the right kind of soil, it doesn't decay." Marcus raised a brow. "What happens?" "It transforms, becomes part of something new." There was a weight in her words, one that pressed directly into the center of his chest. "I thought I had to forget everything to move forward," he admitted. "The research, the failures, even the names of the people who trusted me. But maybe remembering is part of the growth." She touched his arm. Her fingers were warm and sure. "Then let it grow here, with us." Luna had wandered back now, carrying a fistful of pink fungus caps and twirling in place, trailing petal dust behind her like a comet. "Look," she shouted. "I found smile mushrooms. The ones that smell like cake." "They smell like yeast rot," Marcus corrected. "But cake rot," she insisted. Zara chuckled. "Just let her believe it. It makes her happy." Luna stopped twirling and stared at them both. "Are you going to kiss again?" Marcus blinked. "We didn't kiss." Luna tilted her head. "But you're standing really close." "That's always before a kiss in stories." Marcus looked at Zara. Her expression was unreadable, but there was amusement in the lines of her eyes. She stepped forward slowly, deliberately. Marcus didn't move. When she reached him, she rested her hands gently on his chest. "Do you want it?" The question hung between them, open, vulnerable, not desperate but sure. "Yes," he said without hesitation. She leaned in and pressed her lips to his. It wasn't fevered or forced, it was slow, reverent, like sealing a truth that had been whispered for weeks. His hands found her waist, steadying them both as the world fell silent. Somewhere nearby, Luna made a gagging noise. "You're going to melt the mushrooms." Zara broke the kiss with a laugh against his mouth. Marcus smiled. "Worth it." They spent the rest of the day planting new rose root fruit in the north corner, climbing seed lace near the trellis. Marcus fetched water while Zara showed Luna how to shape the soil to trap condensation. By late afternoon, their hands were stained green and gold, and their backs ached from effort, but no one complained. At dusk, they sat beneath the open shelter panel, legs stretched out, the air cool and smelling of moss and ash fruit. Luna dozed with her head in her mother's lap, snoring faintly. Marcus leaned back on his elbows, watching the sky fade from copper to indigo. Zara's fingers played absent-mindedly with his hair. "I never thought peace would look like this," he said. "It doesn't have to be perfect," she replied. "Just real." He turned his head and kissed the inside of her wrist. And for the first time in his life, Marcus realized he wasn't surviving anymore. He was living. The first sign was not sound but absence. The birds stopped calling just after dusk. The spores in the western canopy, which normally floated like drifting embers, vanished from the air as if the forest itself had paused to hold its breath. Inside the shelter, Marcus was oiling the hinges on the backup hatch when the motion alert chimed. Not once, 3 times. Steady, deliberate. He didn't curse, didn't speak. He wiped his hands on his shirt and crossed to the console with a calmness that felt like it belonged to someone else. He already knew what the sensor would say. They were back outside. The ridgeline glowed faintly on the monitor. Shadows drifted between spore fields in practice formation. Human silhouettes, 3 of them, no more. No hesitation. No more scouting. This time they were coming in. Marcus stared at the blinking interface, a growing stillness settling in his chest. His body moved automatically, switching the shelter to lockdown mode, rerouting power to the inner doors, dimming external lights to 0. He turned and found Zara already behind him. She held Luna's hand, the girl's white hair mussed from sleep. Neither spoke. "They're close," he said. "Too close." Zara's eyes sharpened. "We can't fight them here." "I've laced the perimeter," Marcus said. "Hidden spores. Motion-activated traps. It'll buy us time." Zara nodded, but not much. Her hand reached instinctively for the cane, but stopped short. Instead, she straightened her spine and stepped forward on her own, favoring the leg but walking. Marcus watched her for half a heartbeat. "You don't need to." "I do," she interrupted. "We run. They'll follow. We hide. They'll burn the forest to find us." Her voice was steady, but he could see the tremor in her fingers. Not fear, conviction. She looked at Luna. "Go to the crawl passage. Just like we practiced." Luna hesitated. "I want to stay." "Now," Zara said, not unkindly. Luna's lower lip trembled, but she obeyed, slipping toward the rear hatch and vanishing into the low-access duct lined with padded vine and moss. Marcus had reinforced it days ago, just in case. Now it was the only exit that mattered. He turned back to Zara. "You should go with her." "So should you." "I can't," he said. "This shelter, this place, they'll tear through it if I don't hold them off." She stepped closer. "You told me not to run." He blinked. She touched his chest, just over the old scar above his ribs. "You told me I didn't have to be afraid anymore." "I'm not, so don't ask me to leave you now." Marcus swallowed. For a moment, the fear that had ruled his life for years threatened to rise again. Fear of loss, of failure, of hurting someone he couldn't save. He looked into her eyes. She wasn't unafraid, she was choosing something stronger than fear. And he knew then he couldn't protect her by shielding her. He had to stand beside her. He nodded. "We'll hold them together." The forest was thick with vapor and tension. Marcus moved ahead, barefoot on the moss to silence his steps. Zara followed close behind, her movements low and precise, the short blade in her hand made from shaped resin and steel. They reached the southern flank just as the first poacher emerged, tall, masked, rifle slung at his hip. He swept the clearing. With a motion sensor, unaware that he'd already stepped across the trigger line, Marcus threw the flare beacon. It detonated midair in a burst of blinding light, illuminating the poacher's silhouette against the trees. He screamed, clutching his visor, stumbling back just as Zara surged forward with speed born of desperation. Her blade found his side just deep enough to disable, not kill. He crumpled. From the ridge, The second and third men shouted. Footsteps thundered through brush, weapons raised. Marcus grabbed Zara's hand, pulling her behind a fungal wall that exhaled spores when disturbed. The mist rose thick and yellow, burning the eyes and lungs of those who didn't wear protection. One of the attackers fired blindly. The shot cracked bark and ricocheted off a root node. Marcus reached into his belt and pulled the glass vial. Cover your mouth, he said. He hurled the vial into the underbrush. It shattered with a sharp crack, releasing a billowing cloud of reactive pollen that ignited on contact with the poacher's boot prints. Flames danced across the moss like spilled lightning. Screams followed, then retreating footsteps, then silence, only. The breathing of the forest remained. They didn't return that night. Marcus and Zara moved through the perimeter twice, confirming no heat signatures, no motion, just the echo of violence and a few drops of blood in the grass-dotted sunrise. They returned to the shelter. Luna was waiting near the greenhouse, eyes wide, face pale. When she saw them, she ran. Marcus bent to catch her, and she crashed into his chest, sobbing. I thought, she gasped. We're here, he whispered, holding her tight. We're safe. Zara crouched beside them, pulling both into her arms. They stayed like that until the shelter's light sensors activated, warming the air with simulated daylight, a soft breeze stirring the hanging moss curtains. Life resumed. In the days that followed, they rebuilt together. The southern wall, scorched by fire, was patched with heat-treated glass. The ruined traps were replaced with smarter ones, non-lethal but loud. Marcus added layered filtration to the shelter's upper vents while Zara reseeded the outer beds with calming herbs that masked their scent. Luna painted a warning on the tree near the trail. It wasn't in any known language, just streaks of color and a spiral marker. Her people used to say, "This place is claimed." On the fourth day, they stood at the edge of the clearing, watching new sprouts emerge from charred soil. Zara leaned into Marcus's side. Her legs still ached, but she no longer winced with every step. You fought for this place, she said. For us. He looked down at her hand in his. You did too. I used to think healing meant isolation, she continued. That I could protect Luna by keeping everyone else out. That love was a luxury we couldn't afford. You didn't speak, but you showed me something else, she said. Love isn't a risk, it's the thing worth risking for. Marcus turned to face her. You're not running anymore. Neither are you. Then she kissed him without hesitation, without fear. Luna groaned behind them. Not again. You two are worse than moss birds. Marcus laughed into Zara's mouth. She pulled away with a grin. I like moss birds, she said. Let's go plant more, Luna declared. The sky plants are ready. Sky plants? Marcus asked. Obviously, she said. They grow tall enough to tickle the clouds. Zara raised a brow. And who told you that? Luna grinned. I made it up, but you believed it. Marcus lifted her easily onto his shoulders. As they walked toward the greenhouse, Zara reached for his hand, and this time he didn't hesitate, not to hold it, not to believe, not to belong. The sky over Kepler opened like a slow breath. Mist rose in spirals from the warm soil, catching the dawn light and scattering it in fractured beams across the moss-veined shelter. The air smelled of damp bark and bloom dust, clean, rich, and full of promise. The forest had stilled after the chaos, its pulse settling into rhythm again, cautious but alive. Inside the shelter, everything was different and yet the same. Marcus stood at the edge of the greenhouse, sleeves rolled to his elbows, soil dark under his fingernails. He wiped his brow with the back of his hand, exhaled, and leaned back to admire the rows he'd spent the morning planting. His breath came slower, now measured, grounded. Behind him, laughter echoed. Luna sprinted across the clearing, her arms flailing like wings, barefoot and shrieking with joy as Zara chased her around the moss beds, mock scolding in her native tongue. Marcus smiled and bent down to inspect a leaf curl, not for disease, just out of habit. The plant was healthy, strong like everything else they'd rebuilt. It had been weeks since the poachers came, long enough for the land to settle, for the memory of violence to fade into something distant, like a dream dissolving in light. Zara's voice brought him back. You're not supervising. We could be planting weeds. He turned. She stood in the sun, hands on her hips, hair braided back in the style of her people, long white strands woven with strips of dried vine. Her skin gleamed, and her eyes held the dry amusement that always accompanied her challenges. He wiped his palms on his tunic. I trust you. Mostly. She stepped toward him. Mostly? He tilted his head. You do have a tendency to name plants based On how they look instead of their gene map. They respond better to names that mean something, she said, not missing a beat. And your science words sound like sneezing, he grinned. They are precise. They are lonely. Marcus opened his mouth to respond, but Luna interrupted. Mama Marcus, come see what I made. She stood near the base of the spiral trellis, pointing proudly to a circle of smooth stones she'd arranged into a rough heart. Inside, she'd planted one of every flower she could find: red spore caps, bloom vine buds, even a stubby skyroot sprout she'd insisted would grow tall enough to reach the moon. Zara walked over and crouched beside her. What is this? A wishing garden? Luna said. So no one forgets what we fought for. Marcus's breath caught in his throat. Zara looked up at him, eyes soft. From your daughter's mouth. Marcus felt something shift in his chest. The word daughter landed like a stone dropped into still water, not just a title, a truth. Later, after Luna had gone inside to prepare lunch with her usual chaos of overspiced root stew, Marcus and Zara sat by the stone circle. The afternoon light danced through the trellis above, casting shifting shadows across the ground. Zara leaned her shoulder into his. Do you still hear it? Hear what? The guilt. Marcus took a long breath. Sometimes, but it's quieter, like a ghost losing its name. She reached over, lacing her fingers through his. And the fear? He looked at her. Gone. Or maybe changed. Now it's not about failing anymore, he said. It's about not missing this, not missing a single moment of it. She smiled, resting her head on his shoulder. I used to believe I would raise Luna alone, she murmured. That there was no world where she'd be allowed joy, safety, a father. Marcus turned to her. I didn't know I could be that. You already are, she said. You just had to grow into it. Their lips met, not rushed or hungry, but patient, familiar. He tasted the warmth of earth and breath, the certainty of something that no longer needed to be earned. When they parted, Zara pulled something from her belt pouch. It was a carved wooden token, simple, worn, no larger than a thumbprint. A sigil from her people, a spiral wrapped in a crescent. I carried this when I fled with Luna, she said. It belonged to my mate. Marcus's heart stilled. You don't have to. I'm not giving it to you, she said, smiling faintly. I'm placing it here. She reached forward and gently pressed the token into the soil beneath the heart of Luna's garden. We carry him, she said, but we grow forward. Marcus nodded. Together, they sat until the light shifted gold and Luna reappeared on the porch, face smeared with herb paste and triumph. Dinner. And I only burned half of it. Zara stood, brushing her hands off. Progress. Marcus followed, but paused before entering the shelter. He walked to the outer garden where a short wooden post had been staked days earlier. Its surface was still blank raw wood, untouched. He took the carving knife from his belt and with deliberate care, etched the words he'd carried in his mind since the night the poachers came. The garden of second chance. Wesson. He returned inside. The scent of food, over-seasoned, wild, and absolutely perfect, wrapped around him like a welcome. Zara stood by the stove, stirring with one hand while Luna sat cross-legged on the floor, humming an improvised tune to the rhythm of her spoon against a tin bowl. Marcus crossed the room and kissed Zara's temple without a word. She leaned into him, and for a long moment, nothing else existed. No history, no damage, only breath, only heat. Only now. They sat together that night beneath the glow of the old solar lamps, eating stew that tasted better for being shared. Luna fell asleep halfway through her second bowl, curled against Marcus's side, small fingers clutching his tunic. Zara rested her head on his shoulder and whispered, "This is home." Marcus kissed her hair and whispered back, "Yes, it is, outside." The stars began to pierce through the high canopy, flickering through leaves and spores, watching quietly as something whole and real finally took root. The forest no longer felt haunted, it felt like it had been waiting for them. The forest had entered its flowering season again. Clusters of fire-leaf blossoms hung heavy on the upper canopy, their scents syrupy and warm, drifting down into the clearing like invisible honey. The air hummed with pollinators, long-winged hover moths, and glitter wasps that moved from plant to plant in patterns Luna claimed to understand perfectly. It's math, she'd explained that morning, scooping spores with both hands and tossing them into the wind like confetti. But for pollen, Marcus hadn't argued. He'd simply watched her run barefoot through the garden, arms out, hair shining like starlight in the sun. She was taller now, stronger. Her laugh was the same, but there was something behind it: awareness, curiosity, a steadiness that hadn't been there before. Months had passed since the poachers came and went, and in that time, peace had rooted itself deeper than either adult had expected. Now the shelter was not a refuge, it was a home. Zara was kneeling at the edge of the greenhouse, tending to the new line of vine fruit that curled up the mesh fencing. Marcus was beside her, sorting harvested spore pods into storage pouches, his hands moving with casual precision. And Luna, she was doing her best to wear them both out. "Watch me." "No, really, watch," she shouted, poised on top of a flat stone by the north garden bed. Zara turned. "We are watching." Luna planted her feet, arms wide like wings. "This is called the triple flip, drop twist. It's a somersault," Marcus said with a small smirk. "It's advanced," Luna said, glaring. "You need at least one alien parent to do it. Then I suppose you qualify," Zara replied dryly, brushing hair from her forehead. Luna inhaled, then launched herself forward in a flurry of limbs. She tumbled off the stone, rolled once, stood, and flung her arms in the air. "Ta-da," Marcus clapped. Zara whistled between the fingers. Luna beamed, cheeks flushed with triumph. Then she looked at Marcus, eyes narrowing. There was a hesitation in her expression, not uncertainty, but preparation. She stepped closer, brushing dirt from her elbows, and stood just in front of him. Her voice was quieter now. "Did you see the landing?" "I did," Marcus said. "Clean arc." "Stuck the dismount." Luna nodded. "Good." A pause. Then, "Did you know you're my dad?" Marcus's breath caught. The word landed between them like the gentlest blow, startling in its softness, devastating in its simplicity. He looked at Zara, who was frozen in place, her mouth parted slightly, but she didn't speak. She didn't need to. He turned back to Luna. Her gaze didn't waver. "You've called me Marcus for a long time," Marcus said carefully. "Are you sure?" Luna reached up, placed her small hand on his wrist. "You don't feel like Marcus anymore. You feel like mine." Marcus didn't know what to say, so instead he knelt, drew her into a hug, and pressed his forehead to hers. "Thank you," he said. His voice cracked, but he didn't hide it. Luna shrugged like it was obvious. "You were already doing all the work. I just made it official." Behind them, Zara pressed a hand to her chest, not because of surprise, but because of what it meant, what it confirmed. Later, as dusk crept across the treetops and fire-leaf petals fluttered down like slow-burning embers, Zara and Marcus sat together on the porch with Luna curled between them, half asleep from too much sun and running. "She said it," Marcus murmured. "She did," Zara said, voice barely a whisper. "And you didn't run." "I didn't even flinch," she smiled, brushing her knuckles along his cheek. "That's growth." Marcus leaned into the touch, then glanced down at Luna. "You ever think maybe she shouldn't be the only one?" Zara raised her brow. I mean," he said, shifting to look at her more fully. "This garden's doing well. The shelter's stable. She's strong. We've carved something solid out of dust and fire." Zara's expression was unreadable for a moment. Then she looked down at Luna, at the slow rise and fall of her chest, at the pale lashes fluttering in sleep. "She wants someone to boss around," she said thoughtfully. Marcus chuckled. "She already bosses me around." "True," Zara murmured. "But you don't push back." They sat in quiet for a while, listening to the slow purr of nighttime insects beyond the shelter, the low call of dusk birds, the drip of dew forming on leaf edges. Then Zara spoke again, softer this time. "I used to think I wouldn't survive. Losing one more person. I know." But now she turned to him, eyes shining. "Now I think we could grow again. Not to replace, just to add." Marcus nodded, emotion thick in his throat. "You think the world can hold it?" "I think we can." He reached for her hand and kissed the back of it, then let their fingers intertwine. "Then let's not rush, but let's dream out loud." Luna shifted between them in her sleep, murmuring something about root cake and flying deer. Marcus looked at Zara again. "If we do, maybe we build something even stronger than survival." Zara rested her head on his shoulder. "A second child. Not because we're escaping the past, but because we believe in the future." And beneath them, the earth stayed warm. The garden swayed gently in the breeze. The shelter, worn and alive, held fast. Above it all, the stars looked down, not distant but close, like they were listening, like they were waiting.